Does your photography tell the right story? We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more right now. Hi everyone and welcome to Pal to Tech. This is not going to be a camera or a tech tutorial video, and I totally understand that if you came here today expecting to see that kind of content, you're going to want to save your time. I understand, and I'll see you in the next video. For all the rest of you that have stayed and are here right now, I do need you to be aware that I'm going to be showing and discussing some images that could be potentially triggering for some of you. They will be shown to you exactly as the original photographer captured them 47 years ago. In July of 1977, my dad took me to visit New York City. I was 10 years old at the time. I had never been to New York before. I didn't know it at the time, but this was going to be the last trip that we would ever take again. So, on July 13th, 1977, which was our third night there, right at 8:30 p.m., a series of lightning strikes hit some critical Con Edison electrical power lines. Power stations that were all over the area were shutting down due to the overload. And by 9:34 p.m., all power to the entire city of Manhattan, as well as the surrounding areas of Queens, Staten Island, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Westchester was lost. And to make things even worse, the city was also experiencing a heat wave. And that night, the temperature just out in the street was 93 degrees Fahrenheit. I can still remember what that hot city smelled like in 1977 as you were walking across a subway ventilation grate. I remember these tin drum sounds of the street performers and all of the lights everywhere and yellow taxis yelling and music blasting out of stores. I saw so many different kinds of people of different races and nationalities and speaking all kinds of different languages, and I couldn't stop looking up, down, and around and everywhere while I was walking down the street while my dad was holding my hand. And then, a second or two later, everything just went completely dark like that. After about half a second of silence, you suddenly heard this collective gasp everywhere. It was this massive human whoosh sound that reverberated throughout the city. And I looked up and I could see my dad. And from the look on his face, I knew that we were quickly heading back to the apartment. This magazine contains some photographs. This is one of the best photos, I think, of the blackout. And you can clearly see that the only lights that are on are right here. And what makes it such a powerful photo is that dark silhouette. Lights blinked off. TV pictures shrank and died. Elevators hung high in their shafts. Water pumps failed. Refrigerators and coolers quit. Stores, banks, businesses, and stock exchanges closed. And in the hospitals, because they didn't have any light, and some of them didn't have backup generators, and they were in the middle of surgery, I might add, they had to sew the patient up and finish the surgery by flashlight. In the 25 hours that followed, I was just this 10-year-old kid that was in a strange city plunged into darkness. Of course, New York was in the middle of that heat wave, so millions of windows were left wide open, and the noise was unlike anything I had ever heard before. As the night dragged on in the darkness without power, in parts of Brooklyn, South Bronx, and in Harlem, there were intense levels of violence and looting that lasted all the way into the next day. And with that in mind, this is a good time to return to the story that these photographs told. Notice anything? The very first thing you see, the collection of photos right at the beginning here, you've got conflict, anger, and violence between the police and the residents. The stories that these photos told, they were accurate.
The area under the aging Broadway L suddenly became a carnival, a place where surging crowds shuttled from store to store, looting as they went.
There was not much police could do to stop the looting. That's a burning police car you're seeing there.
It was a tragedy.
25 years I've been in business. I got wiped out in one day.
Somehow, they did manage to overlook a penny in the cash register. How bad a loss is this?
Well, unbelievable. Did you hear the lady? She said it was unbelievable, which it is. The loss is total.
And then you turn the page, and these photos are telling a very different story. You know, we're all in it together, and we're going to make the best of it. We're going to sell candles and offer free booze.
Let's do candles. Going. This is it, the last few candles of the day.
And then you move down here, and you wouldn't think these people had a care in the world. And notice how you can change the entire mood of the story that you're trying to tell by just altering the color. Here's a hospital lit only by the emergency backup lights, but it's warm, it's caring. But then you jump up here, and you've got these New Yorkers right here that were stranded on the subway. And one of the places where you can really influence the story you're trying to tell in your photos is if you're taking a street shot. Something that's happening on one side of the street may be completely different than the other. And so the photographer has to choose. And in this case, the photographer chose this side. But as you can see from these photos right here, and they weren't included in the magazine, but these photos show that there was all kinds of things going on and more stealing. You see the story they're trying to tell here. Anger. And of course, there's no better example for that old saying in television news, if it bleeds, it leads. But you can see now that in the collection of these photos together, there is a story being told, even just in the layout. Destruction, stealing, fighting, bleeding, angry, aggressive, upset, pissed off, and the same. Now I want to show you the most haunting photo of all, and it's right here. Now, this photo was taken in 1977, and I don't know what this is right here. It's either a bird or maybe a smudge that was on the negative, or maybe when this magazine was printed. I don't know, but that looks very eerily like the other image we all know. By the time the power finally came back on, there was millions of dollars in property damage. There were thousands of arrests. And once I got back home to California, I kept this magazine as a souvenir of my trip that summer. Is your photography telling the right story? And I'm talking about when you strip away all the gear, everything technical that you've done, right? You're left with just the photos. And if you remain faithful to your original vision, you stay true to your creative intentions, and you capture that scene exactly as you perceived it, yes, if you are honest with yourself and you're honest with your intentions, you're honest with your camera, and you're honest with what you're doing and what your vision is, yes, your photography is telling the right story. Whether you share them in legacy media or more commonly social media, how you arrange your photos together as a whole can change the entire story than what you had originally intended to tell. A lot of the photos that were taken that night had a mode of raw urgency and direct flash to them. Very contrasty, very gritty. Let's take a look at the cover of this magazine now. I'm not going to really talk about it. I'm just going to show it to you. Here it is. I do want to tell you firsthand that the photos in this magazine did not tell the full story. I saw kindness everywhere, from all races, people directing traffic, helping elderly people get back to their homes, helping to guard stores and protect businesses. And interestingly, my dad and I never spoke about that trip again. 3 years later, when he passed away, this magazine got tossed in a box where it remained unopened until I took it out for this video. How do you become better at telling the right stories through your photography? It's not about acquiring better gear or any of these things. Instead, for your photos to be telling the right stories, you, as the photographer, need to always be improving upon three things: reception, perception, and reflection. For reception, how willing are you to actually step out of your own world and your own lived experience and right into that moment that you're shooting? You need to learn to slow down, to recognize and embrace a sense of the curiosity in all of the scenes that are around you, because this will lead to photo opportunities that you may have overlooked. You won't always have all the answers, and sometimes your story may get away from you, and that's okay, because with practice and patience, your photography will grow and it'll take on a life of its own. And as your reception improves, you'll become a better storyteller, and your photos will tell more honest stories. And by great stories, what we actually mean here are more honest stories, told by you, the photographer, who is becoming more receptive to the world around yourself. At the same time, improving your perception will increase the depth and the accuracy of how you go about capturing all the great stories in your photos. The better you are at perceiving things, the better of a communicator that you will be. Your photos will begin to tell stories that other less perspective photographers will miss. And you're going to notice that you will be able to seek out better shooting angles, better environments, and at the same time, you're going to reach a deeper understanding of the world once you get outside of your perceived notions, right? And this deeper sense of authenticity will ultimately fill up your SD card with all of the great stories and all of those moments that you would have never thought possible. And finally, becoming better at telling great stories requires periods of reflection. While you're out there shooting, if there's time, and definitely once you come back and you return and you go through all of your images. By learning to identify what you've shot, the story you've told, and ultimately how you've put it all together for the world, you can better identify what can be improved upon for the next time. Good reflection will make your photography evolve, and your future stories will be told with more intention and better emotional intelligence. And that's because by constantly reflecting on what it is that you've captured and how you tried to tell that story, the internal compass inside of you that guides all of your photography decisions for your next shoot, that compass will be a lot more accurate. Reception, perception, and reflection. There are no shortcuts for this. You have to do the work, but your Uncle Pal the Tech absolutely promises you that not only will your photos tell the right story, you will naturally evolve into a stronger, kinder, more thoughtful human being. You cannot separate a photographer from the photo that they create. So by becoming a better person, you're going to become a better photographer. And by becoming a better photographer, you are going to tell great stories. As we were walking up the steps in the stairwell in the dark of the apartment building, a tall older man was kind of walking down at the same time. I mean, I was terrified of my own shadow, and I kind of shrank back behind my dad, who was walking ahead impatiently, telling me to just calm down and walk faster. As the man passed by me on the stairs, he sort of slowed down, right? And he leaned in a little bit, and even in the low light, I could see that he was an elderly man, an African-American man, and he smiled and told me that I was being very brave, and he said, "Don't worry, I'll watch the door for you, and ain't nobody getting in this building tonight by me, young man." And he chuckled a bit, and he had this real raspy laugh, and he continued his way down the stairs, and I never saw him again, and I've never forgotten him. And with that, I want to thank you so much for being here and watching the video today. I really hope that you found the video helpful, or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I will see you in a new video very soon. Take care.
For most of the people of New York City, the first light that was available today was the light of the sun, a hot one.
Countless examples of compassion in the face of chaos. At Tom's Restaurant, African Americans formed a human chain around the place to protect it from looters. Such was their affection for the owners, Gus and None Vlahavas.
But soon after daybreak, power started to come back on in scattered neighborhoods.
Is that why you're open so early?
No, just because I couldn't sleep, so I came down.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he was doing business.
Some yaga.
Yeah.
And some cutty saw.
Is that right?
Right.
You're having a party at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well, what else is there?
Dark is nothing. Aged meat will get dark also. That doesn't mean it's bad. You can smell it too. Beautiful. Smell it. No odor.
Meat and fish are among the foods that spoil first. It's true what he says. If meat is slimy, it's bad. If it turns dark, that means nothing. But it's bad if it turns green.
And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise with you.